I wonder when our room's going to be ready. Well, what do you think?
This is really nice.
Yeah, I know, right?
This looks kind of messy.
Yeah.
Maybe we should tweet this.
I think I'll just let the hotel know about it. Did you make dinner reservations for tonight?
No, I thought you did. Hey, let's order some drinks and apps.
Great idea. I am starving. Now, where's that server at?
I'm going as fast as I can. Can you take us to the airport?
Good day, everyone. My name is Brent Smith, Interim Dean at the School of Communication at Emerson College and also Professor of Marketing. I'm here with a distinguished panel of guests to have a conversation about how innovative hotels are using modern technologies to attract travelers. So I will ask my guests to briefly introduce themselves and we'll get on with our discussion. Vaughn, why don't you get us started?
Hi, everyone. My name is Vaughn Davis. I'm the general manager of Dream Hollywood here in lovely, sunny Los Angeles.
And Jamie?
Hi, everybody. Good to be here with you. I'm had a long tenure in the industry on the digital side of things, and most recently with IHG Hotels and Resorts.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jason?
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm the founder and CEO of Glowing. We've developed a guest messaging platform for globally recognized luxury brands.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we'll begin with Jamie and Vaughn. So if you might share with us your high-level views on how the industry is typically approached leveraging modern technologies, perhaps for engaging with travelers for engagement, satisfaction, and loyalty. So Jamie, if you might.
Sure. So my background has been largely with the bigger chains and brands in the industry, and so I'll take my perspective from that viewpoint. And what we see with the large chains is that the focus is on guest experience, but it's also about doing that at an enterprise technology level. So using scale technology platforms that can be built once and then deployed at scale across many thousands of hotels. And so some of the examples of that we've seen in the industry are things like digital key for guests entering guest rooms, but also other services, either pre-stay, so digital concierge, and also other services in stay. But typically, when you're talking about the large chains and brands, one of the big considerations is how can I create a consistent experience for my guests each time, every time, in every one of my hotels. And if you've got thousands of hotels, that's quite a tough challenge to overcome. And so the focus has actually been on how can I create those enterprise level capabilities and then deploy them easily to everywhere. And that's quite a different scenario from what we see with maybe some of the smaller individual hotels or smaller groups that can potentially do things differently.
Thank you, Jamie, for that perspective. And Vaughn, you've got quite a bit of insight from the luxury side. So if you could maybe share with us what have been maybe some approaches that you've seen in terms of traveler engagement or satisfaction, loyalty.
Yeah, I think for us, we wanted to take a first principles approach towards reinventing the guest journey and understanding some of the changes due to advancements in technology throughout the world and how they've impacted hospitality. It's what kind of gave us the green light to start innovating, right? So For example, the introduction of the smartphone and all of the seamless features of utilizing a smartphone to access your home, to control the thermostat in your home, and modern devices like an Alexa or a Siri or any of the other AGIs that are available for public consumption, right? So what we did, we said, okay, let's evaluate it from the guest journey for your hotels. So whatever is available for guests in a commercial capacity should also be available, and in a residential capacity should also be available for them at hotels. And then we said, all right, let's see if we can integrate some robots. So we added 2 robots into the guest journey who can deliver to the guest rooms, which allows our team members to be a little bit more free in their approach and their engagement with our hotel guests, and then be able to deliver, an excellent service or experience throughout the stay. Another approach that we had outside of mobile keys was the ability to have a company called Checksology partner with us to launch digital tags, which has NFC communication, which is near field communication technology embedded into their product that allows our hotel guests to not have to worry about where their luggage ticket is whenever they're traveling or they're out and about. They get a text message with the items and a picture and the luggage tag number. And then whenever they're ready to retrieve the items, they come back to the front desk and it's already in the dashboard, recorded with pictures. So we know exactly what you stored and when we can give it back to you. And it has caused a seamless experience for the checkout process and also for the check-in process as well. Another thing that we found is that there is a bit of a captive audience battle out there right now, right? So due to all of the social media outlets and the fight for your time and your attention, we found that there's a correlation to hospitality and the experiences that we have to offer because of the introduction of social media and social networking. So we launched the world's first NFT gallery in our lobby, which gave us the ability to connect with guests on a whole new level, having events that were art drop or NFT drop events, and having themed cocktails that coincided with the events, and then also tokenizing our screens. So we created this ecosystem where we're engaging our guests, not only just when they're here on property, but also when they depart the hotel.
Wow, it's really fascinating. So thank you both, the enterprise view and the luxury view as well. So it's exciting to know that that technologies are adopted so mindfully, all in towards serving the guest, the traveler, et cetera. So let's pivot for a moment to Jasen. You've got some good insight around messaging platforms. So maybe help us understand how a messaging platform of all things can help hotels stay well connected to their guests. So maybe if you had to put those possibilities into a few buckets, what might those be?
Thanks for the question. And I'll probably just back up just for a second and just talk about messaging in general. If we just think about what messaging is, and we do it every day, all throughout the day. And we generally message with people that we, friends, close friends, family, and it's really the most intimate and personal form of digital communication. And like I said, we do it every day. And so when we take a look at what is luxury and what many luxury hotels are trying to do is they're trying to create these personal connections and experiences. And so that's why we see there's just a very natural fit between messaging and luxury, because messaging is that intimate communication and luxury is trying to get there. So when we take a look at, going to your question more directly, when we take a look at why hotels adopt messaging, we find that there's really like 12 common use cases and reasons why people adopt. But for the brevity of this conversation, I would focus on like 3 things that we find are becoming more and more prevalent globally. So I'll start off with the first one, and in no particular order, but these are the top 3 that we see becoming more and more common. Number 1 is communicating with guests who drop off because they don't want to wait. So, waiting on hold, waiting in line. But with messaging, everybody can just message and move on with their day. Now, some interesting stats that we have a close relationship with Meta, and they did some research that last year, and they published the research, and some interesting data came out of messaging. So 55% of people stop shopping if they have to wait on hold, which includes, and I think very relevant for hospitality nowadays with labor shortages, we see across the industry where people have to wait on hold longer, drop-off rates are higher, right? And so now with messaging, people can communicate and move on with their life. 2/3 of consumers prefer messaging over phone or email. and over 1 billion people every week message an official messaging account. So we find that number one, it just allows for people to guests not to have to wait. Second bucket is just communicating with silent and foreign travelers. So especially we find in international gateway cities like New York, London, Dubai, Singapore, etc., that when you have people from all over the world coming, language can sometimes be a barrier. So for instance, we take some clients that we have in Dubai. One of the main reasons why they've adopted messaging is because they have a lot of Russian guests. And a lot of those Russian guests only speak Russian. And it's hard to find Russian speaking staff members to be able to communicate with them. But now through messaging, they're able to do that through translation. So I would say that being able to communicate with your silent and foreign travelers. And then the third thing is being able to communicate with select groups of guests easily. So for instance, let's say you're going to have a fire alarm drill, or maybe even something that's occurred within the property. You want to be able to easily communicate with your guests. Messaging is the easiest way. Being able to, you already know within your systems, like who's checked in. And so with a good messaging platform that's integrated into your systems, you can easily communicate out what's happening. Or even you can bifurcate that even further. Maybe there's an event that's happening, a wedding. And so maybe there's something has occurred in the wedding, maybe the dinner has been moved. So being able to communicate with all your checked in guests who are here for the wedding is now much more easily done through messaging. So it's just overall the ability to connect with guests more easily and throughout more the guest journey, both ways. The hotels wanting to communicate with guests and guests wanting to communicate with the property. It's just allowed for that more intimate and value add connection. So that's how I would kind of address that question.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jason. So ubiquitous technology with maybe even more value-added applications, right? Excellent. So I'd like now to discuss for a moment how, when it comes to NFTs, what might be some better prospects within the hospitality industry, maybe in terms of improving loyalty and attached benefits, and also improving brand awareness and driving revenue. So Jamie, if you would, speak to us how NFTs might relate to prospects for improving loyalty and attached benefits. And then we'll follow up with Vaughn on improving brand awareness and driving revenue. Jamie.
Sure, thanks, Brent. Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting opportunity for these large-scale loyalty programs because one of the challenges is always that you've got potentially millions of members of those programs, and those members are wanting to accrue benefits and then redeem them, maybe in the traditional way, which is redeeming points pre-stay. But increasingly, when you look at some of the loyalty programs that are out there, it's about redeeming smaller, for smaller benefits, maybe during stay or post-stay, rather than having to, the traditional model was to accrue enough points until you've saved enough for a stay and then splurge on that and spend them on the stay. Whereas what we're finding, more recently is that actually, people don't have the patience to, or necessarily don't stay regularly enough, frequently enough to accrue enough points to do that. But also just in the, in the younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they're more inclined to want instant gratification. And so an NFT is actually a really interesting vehicle through which you could store loyalty credentials and also store and then redeem benefits at a later stage. So whether that's something like an F&B credit or a spa credit for a stay, or anything really that you could use during a stay. But once it's attached to, you can have the loyalty credentials attached to the NFT. And then as you accumulate those benefits, you've got a really robust trackable process to be able to store and then redeem those at a later stage. So it's just one example, but I think it's a really interesting one, and it's kind of a really obvious one for our industry where that capability at the moment is those benefits are offered, but the actual process to store and then redeem is somewhat fragmented.
Thank you, Jamie. And what you've offered to us is also a way to appreciate the importance of more frequent engagement, right, during the stay, and maybe looking to alternatives between stays that might not actually happen without more touch points.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And I think it talks to as well what Jason was just saying, in that, while guests are in stay, if you can then identify guests that have accrued certain benefits, you could then reach out to them proactively through a messaging platform and say, why don't we've got a special chef arrangement, in the restaurant, or we've got, a spa treatment that's unusual. Why don't you come and use your benefit for that? So I think bringing those things together has lots of possibilities.
Excellent, excellent. And Vaughn, to you, good prospects for the hospitality industry for NFTs and improving brand awareness, driving revenue. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to reevaluate the guest journey, right? I mean, it's usually pre-stay, check-in, arrival experience, mid-stay, check-out, post-stay, and then we close the book. But there's a whole nother paradigm that's not being evaluated, which is how you keep them engaged throughout the life cycle of their loyalty to your brand. And NFTs will be a great way to explore extending that guest journey. And some of the ways that we've done it here at Dream Hollywood is with the launch of our social club. So it's our decentralized members only club that gives you access to a multitude of real world IRL perks. So it'll give you utilities, for example, access to our fitness center, access to the pool cabanas at a discounted rate on the rooftop, access to loungers, even if you're not a hotel guest that's staying here, or access to any of our major events with Tao Group that happen here at our hotel or anywhere throughout the world. For example, we had a social club member reach out most recently about a major event that was happening in Utah. They didn't necessarily have to be here at our hotel to experience what we offer. And because of that, I was able to give them access to that event because they're a social club member. And it's about creating these memorable moments and experiences outside of the confines of your structure, your building. And that's what we've been able to accomplish with the social club. And I think NFTs is just the beginning. This is relatively a new environment, especially for some of the legacy brands, and you're seeing more and more of legacy operators getting involved. I think Porsche just announced that they're involved. We know Starbucks has been involved. We saw that Coachella was also involved. And there's a multitude of ways that you can approach it. And I think for us, it was important to identify the IRL components, the utility, right? So when we launched the social club, we partnered with a world-renowned artist named Perry Cooper, who created one-of-one pieces of art with upwards to 400 unique identifiers associated with each piece of artwork. And those were your membership cards. So as opposed to getting a physical card in the mail, you owned an NFT that gave you access to all the perks that we offered. And with that, you were then able to sell your NFT anytime you'd like, or just retain it for the value of the art itself. And I think that's some of the ways that we've approached it. And we would encourage everyone to continue to ideate around the technology. I mean, outside of just reevaluating your traditional loyalty program and how it could be beneficial for you to have it on chain, and how your perks can then extend to augmented reality or mixed reality or virtual reality. Apple just unveiled a new headset that it's going to compete directly with Meta's headset. And we know Mark Zuckerberg and his team has pledged an exorbitant amount of money towards building out the metaverse. And if they're planning on scaling within that spectrum and in that digital world, I think hotels need to have a closer look and start to develop and create programming that associates with that world as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Vaughn, so much. Really interesting example with the artwork, right? For the social membership. It reminds us in marketing, we say that consumers don't necessarily buy something for what it does, but for what it means.
Right. And you know what? It's funny, Brent, that you bring that up, because we just launched the NFT gallery as just a way to reevaluate traditional art programming at hotels. And then we'd have another think tank meeting and we'd ideate and say, oh my gosh, how about the social club? And then we built the social club. And then from there, it became the tokenization of screens. So now something I didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning is we have tokenized each screen in our hotel lobby on the first floor and the second floor. So if you are an NFT artist and you're looking for exposure to our direct captive audience that walks through our lobby on a daily basis, that are patrons at our food and beverage outlets or that are staying at our hotel, you can then pay $899 a month for a screen and then display your art throughout that month cycle. So it gives you now access to selling your art to a completely new audience that you probably wouldn't have access to originally.
Excellent. Excellent. Countably infinite possibilities. I love it. I love it. All right. To Jason, could you maybe offer us an NFT real case, an NFT case in real life that's outside of hospitality?
Sure. I mean, I think Vaughn has done just a really not only admirable, just like a really inspiring job with what he's done with NFTs and other initiatives. We have a client in another vertical is in professional sports. And so they also were experimenting with NFTs. This is a couple seasons ago, where they really had no idea how this was going to work or not. And so similar to Vaughn just ideating and testing things. So what they did is they minted 100 NFTs, and they priced each NFT at slightly under $1,000 per NFT. Now, quite frankly, they didn't really know what the price, what is the market price for this. They just, determined that price. And what was really interesting, they also had no idea what was the take rate of it. When they dropped it, they released the NFT. What happened was within 24 hours, they sold out. So they sold 100 of these NFTs for slightly under $1,000 per, and made close to $100,000 just by offering this NFT. Now, to something that Vaughn was saying, and I can't underscore this enough, that I think utility is really important, and that's something that they also very much embrace. There's a lot of NFTs out there, and I think, dare I say, the majority are things that may not be staying around. I think that tying to real world value, I think, makes a lot of sense. And things that Vaughn was saying is absolutely brilliant. Similar to what this professional sports organization did, they tied real world value by, if you owned an NFT, one of the NFTs, you got discounts on food and beverage. You got discounts on merchandise. You got early access to games. So, you could enter before public could enter a stadium. You got access to certain lounges. And a few other perks as well. But what was also interesting too is they were looking at building a marketplace so that different owners of NFTs could potentially not only sell them, but like rent them for a game or so. So if I couldn't make it, then I could put my NFT on the marketplace so somebody else could pay for it. I could get revenue. The organization could get revenue from this as well. In addition to what they found with these NFTs is it actually drove more revenue and loyalty. Again, things that Vaughn was suggesting as well. It's just really about creating those memorable moments and experiences. And I think that the way that they did it, the way that Vaughn described it, absolutely creates those really unique moments. And frankly, again, as Vaughn was talking about, we live in a very, attention seeking, like it's just, we're all competing for attention. And this is something that allows for, organizations and people who own these entities to really stick out of the crowd, because I have something that's really unique and special. And it's not just because I have it on my phone and you can look at it, but it actually provides real world utility. So that's one example from one of our clients outside of hospitality.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. And thanks for, kind of priming our minds to this example. And linking it to what Vaughn and Jamie shared with us. It's important for people to have a reason to attend to what we say to them, such that it's not merely an interruption, but they've got a reason, some motivation to stay in contact, to cultivate that relationship with their ears or their eyes or their clicks or what have you, whatever's appropriate for the device or modality. Now I'd like to change lanes for a moment into how guests have been, from your perspectives, using or engaging with some of these innovative technologies. So maybe you can share with us something, there's a lot of conversation around human to computer, human to robot, or other smart technology interaction. So Vaughn, maybe you can get us started in that, and then we'll hear from Jamie and Jason.
Sure. Is this where we were supposed to talk about Neuralink and kernel, or no?
It can be.
No, just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, no, what you're finding, I mean, think about it from this perspective. Since I think easy to say 2005, from when you had a Sidekick, right? Your life changed. It went from a Nokia brick phone, as we called it, to now a Sidekick, which gave you access to an abundance of information and resources right at the, you know, the touch of your fingertips. Then we got an iPhone, which is pretty much a supercomputer that's directly connected to your hip, that you can access even more information at a faster rate. So in a sense, we've become a bit of a cybernetic collective, right? We are ultimately androids with the ability to obtain information and action items in a much quicker pace. Our input output speed is increased as well. So with that, for us in hospitality, I think it's important that we keep an eye on and understanding how these shifts have happened in our society and how they then can play a role within our hotels. So what we've done with the robots, I think is a great example with Alfred and Jeffrey. We were a bit concerned that the robots might be a bit off-putting to our guests, but they ended up trending and going viral, and it became a hit. So we had guests that would stay at the hotel just because we gave a personality to our robots that would deliver to the guest rooms. And, you know, I just want to make sure I place an emphasis on this. We connected with our team internally. We had a discussion, and the team was really supportive because it freed them up to engage guests more for meaningful conversations and experiences. And then the toothbrush or the shampoo or the washcloth could easily be delivered by the robot and allow the team member to connect with the guests who might be more susceptible to giving them a larger return on that conversation, because a lot of our guests are tip-based guests, right? Team members, excuse me. So that's some of the things that we focused on with the robot. And then the other items for us that was really important was how to evaluate utilizing the tablets in the guest room. I know tablets were at one point just a buzzword, a marketing tool, but we decided to build the standard operating procedures around the tablets, and then also integrated an app where we're working on making web-based to your mobile device, where you can then, instead of having to pick up the phone and call the front desk, which no one uses, if you don't have a house phone, chances are you're not using a room phone. And what we found our guests doing is they'd actually go on their devices and request items, and that would communicate directly to the team at the front desk or in housekeeping for whatever item was requested, would automatically create a ticket for our guests as well, which would then initiate either a robot or a team member to deliver the item to the room or to answer or respond to the request. Another piece of technology that we didn't mention that we see playing a major role now is the pre-check-in process. We evaluated the entire pre-arrival, pre-check-in, and check-in guest journey. And we partnered with a company called Canary Technologies that built out the registration card, as well as the ability to authorize the credit card before you arrived to the hotel. So we removed that uncomfortable friction that you'd have at the front desk upon arrival, right? If you ever think about it, it's, hi, how are you? So glad to have you. Welcome to Dream Hollywood. We have all of these amazing fun things that you can do. Okay, now I need you to sign here. Here are the rules of engagement. Here's exactly how much I'm going to charge your card additionally. And may I please have that credit card and sign, please? That's a business transaction, which takes it away from the hospitality aspect of what we do. So we wanted to try our best to find a way to creatively remove that completely, so that you can take care of your business before you even arrive here in Los Angeles, and you enter into the hotel to be greeted warmly. You have an excellent arrival experience, and then you're able to go right into your room and utilize your mobile key to access your guest room and enjoy the rest of your stay. And that was built off of the premise of the peak end theory. Right? It's how can we remove as many negative experiences in the guest journey to ensure that it's seamless and it's always at the highest point for ultimate guest satisfaction. And what we found, our hotel here in Hollywood has been in the top 5 of TripAdvisor for the past 3 years now. So it seems like it's working, everyone.
Yeah, congratulations with that. And thank you for sharing all that. I think you really highlight for us, you know, it's important to understand why the customer is coming to your hotel.
Yeah.
Right, to focus on, that's the most relevant thing.
Right.
It concerns them and not the other pain points that you've mentioned. That's not why they're there.
Right.
But actually, it's really interesting if I could jump in something, Vaughn, that you said that actually I think it's very interesting, which is I don't think any hotelier would think that, hey, I'm going to create a bad experience, right? There's not an intention for that. But when you take a look at it and just from the guest eyes and their journey, there are points that we kind of just accept. That's just like, yeah, this is what the process is. Like we have to kind of start off the relationship as, you know, as a business transaction, or we have to accept that people have to, you know, wait in line or wait on hold, whatever it is. So I think it's a really good point about just, you know, how can you remove negative experiences? Because you're right, throughout the guest journey, there are points where it's just kind of accepted that there are these negative experiences, and looking at it, saying, can we actually remove those?
Right. How we wanted to approach it was exactly the way you mentioned it, right? It's how can we remove as many negative experiences? And the mindset originated with just understanding how to program or code, right? So if you're writing software and you're coding and there's some kind of erroneous code and you try to run, it's not going to work. So you have to remove that code and rewrite it. So we evaluated the guest journey from the same perspective with a first principles foundation. It started to remove erroneous code, because a lot of that erroneous code led to a negative experience and then completely, you know, decimated the guest's experience throughout their stay, which does not align with our peak end theory philosophy, right? It's how can we keep it as optimal as possible for the entirety of your stay? And it's not just when you arrive at the property, but it's from the moment you're looking at our hotel online. So part of that peak end theory ties into TripAdvisor. People, 85% of your guests are going to go on TripAdvisor first before they come and stay at your hotel or decide to book at your hotel. So that's part of peak end theory, because what are they reading? Is everything on there positive? I had an individual that I connected with earlier today and said, hey, what's bad at your hotel? Tell me now. I was like, interesting you asked me. You didn't look online at all? He's like, I did, and I can't find anything. So that's kind of how we've approached it, and I think it's worked out for us. And removing as many unnecessary cogs out of the wheel as possible, right? It's like, how many of these different processes or how many different steps do you have to get to an endpoint that are antiquated and unnecessary in an industry? It's one of the oldest in the history of the world. So that was kind of our approach.
Thank you, Vaughn, and thank you, Jason. So Jamie, chime in here for you. So for us, this, you know, human to computer interaction. What are you seeing here in terms of how guests have been or might appreciate engaging with innovative technologies?
Yeah, well, one of the trends we've seen, I think accelerated by the pandemic, was the use of what I'll call digital concierge. So, you know, having a chat experience on a web or mobile or app experience. And the first thing I would say is that, you know, to me, this is not binary. It's not either human or computer. It's actually, the magic comes with the combination of the two. And so, you know, in my experience, we got to a point where we were having millions of interactions with consumers for simple, easy to solve requests that we could handle using a bot. And actually, you know, I've worked in luxury as well, and whether it be a luxury traveler or whether it be a mainstream stay, actually consumers in quite a lot of those, for those sorts of tasks where it's simple, it's quick, they actually would rather self-serve and do it themselves. They just want the lowest friction to get the task done. So something like reset my password or check my points balance or something like that, you know, really actually in my experience, customers, irrespective of what type of experience, stay experience they're having, they just want to do that simply. And if you can do that using automation, using a bot, then fantastic. Where it makes a difference, though, is that if someone does want to speak to someone or they can't get to what they need to get to using automation, you have to quickly get them to a person. And with that experience, get them to a person, and don't get, the rules that we put in place were around, never have the customer repeat themselves. So in other words, make sure that the person that they end up speaking to knows about the interactions that they've had in the past. And this talks to, Vaughn, your description about guest journey. So looking at it holistically, thinking about things like omnichannel and saying, well, actually, if I interact in one channel and then move to another, or there's a gap of days or weeks or even months in between those interactions, that history should still be there so that it's a seamless experience for the guest and they can pick up where they left off. And this was one of the things that was really interesting about asynchronous messaging. So as opposed to chat, which you have either a bot chat session or a live chat session, when it's done, you close it and it's gone away. Whereas asynchronous messaging, it's still in your phone, just like all of the rest of the messages you have with your family and your friends. And if you then go back to that at a later stage, you can start to re-interact. And of course, you've got the breadcrumb history of the conversations that you've been having. And so these are really small things. And again, they sound quite obvious, but I think actually they're a big change in some of the experiences we're delivering to guests. The last thing I would mention as well is thinking about the person that is when you're the customer or the guest is talking to a person either physically or digitally, equipping that person with the right information. And so one of the technologies using AI that we looked at was agent assist, if you like. So it's basically next best action, using AI to also join in and listen to a call potentially or an interaction, and then help recommend this might be the best thing to offer, or this might be the answer to the question. And I think that collaboration between human and machine is actually a really interesting area, and particularly when you look at our industry where labor shortages are still, a big challenge for us in many countries across the world, whether that be in call centers or working on the front desk. And so the more that actually you can help shorten training times and equip people with really good information by using AI, like ChatGPT, then the better we'll be able to equip people to help guests, and have the experience that they're looking for. So lots of interesting stuff there. I think we're only scratching the surface at the moment. So I think there's lots more to do and to develop in the space.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jamie. Jason, anything you'd like to add to this topic?
Yeah, I think I just want to underscore something Jamie just said, lowest friction. So, from our experience, we live the world of messaging, and I think people can intuit, some common use cases like, messaging to make a reservation, request amenities in the room, etc. But I thought it might be interesting to share just some interesting just messages that we've seen just in the past week with some of our guest properties that I think underscores your question, Brent, which is around just how are guests engaging with technologies? And I would extend that question to be to make it a statement of, I think that when you have engaging technologies, it creates more engaging guests. And I'll give a couple of examples with what we've seen through messaging. So there was a conversation around a soccer match, and there was a bunch of friends that are wanting to watch a game. In this hotel, they had a big screen in an area, and they wanted to change the game to another game, but they didn't really see anybody. And so the way that they did that, they actually just messaged, and somebody came and took care of switching the game. So otherwise, what would have happened? Because in the messaging conversation, the guest who was messaging was saying we want to change the game. We don't see anybody that can help us do that. We tried ourselves, and they're frustrated. But now they messaged, they called engineering, they came, they took care of it, and then they were happy with that. Another small example was a guest was in a restaurant and got some food and didn't like the food. But it was really interesting is they took a photo of the food and messaged their issue, as opposed to they could have just told somebody. But I think maybe there's something about they didn't feel comfortable, blah, blah, blah. And so that person would just, in another scenario, would have just left with being unsatisfied. But in this case, they communicated, and then the hotel was able to resolve that situation there. And another one was there was a more of a distress situation where somebody, it was an older gentleman. They were on property, was at a resort, and they fell down, and they couldn't get up, and they couldn't call for help because it was a big resort. And so the person had their phone with them, and then they were able to message and get the help that they needed. So I think in all those examples, people I think can intuit, oh yeah, we can request when we need something. But I think it also provides the opportunity to create more engaged touch points. Whereas if that channel didn't exist, this engaging technology, then you would have lost those engagement touch points. So I just want to kind of give some examples to underscore that point.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. So I'd like to kind of just close our conversation, if I might, with something that we hear from pilots sometimes, right? They say it's the pilot, not the plane. And so you've each kind of shared with us different technologies and how they might be applied, engaged with, and whatnot. So how might we translate that statement, it's the pilot, not the plane, regarding technology to the industry? Who'd like to go first? Sure, Vaughn, go ahead.
I can kick it off. Yeah, no, I think that's an important question, Brent, and thank you for bringing it up. From my experience, what I found is a lot of hoteliers tend to explore new technologies, and they're really excited about it. And then they try it for maybe a couple of months, and it's not working the way they envisioned. And they make a phone call, they send a letter or an email and say they don't want to use the product anymore. It's not working. We took a completely different approach. We said, okay, how can we work in tandem with the providers or the partners to help create the new standard operating procedures to allow this product to work? We see its utility. We see that it's important for the industry. We understand that it's going to increase our guests' engagement and satisfaction scores, but how can we partner with them? So we'd hold biweekly calls with all of our partners, and we'd write standard operating procedures. And if there's something that we wanted to address, we'd bring it up to them. We had an idea, we'd say, hey, look at this new idea. How do you feel about adding this new component? And they and their dev teams would get together and start building, right? And we have to work together to get to the end goal, right? Which is ultimately higher guest satisfaction scores. I'll give you the robots, for example. When they initially arrived, they could call the elevator and go up to the guest room, but then they would ring the doorbell. And I said, well, not many guests answer the doorbell anymore because they have rings at home and it goes right to their phone and it vibrates their phone and lets them know someone's at the door, or they might get an alert that says that someone's at your front door before they even ring the doorbell. Can you text the guest? They said, brilliant idea. And then they created it. So allowed them to text the hotel guests. And then we also had a discussion about the capacity of the robots, and the team responded favorably and said, okay, we're going to get larger delivery bays and reevaluate how the robot delivers items and have different trays. And it's about working together in unison so that you can ensure that the product works, as opposed to saying, oh, product doesn't work, we give up, let's move on.
Cool.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, if I could jump in, I think, Vaughn, everything you said, I like 100% agree. I think that is, I'm going to go on a limb and say, Vaughn, you're probably more of an unusual GM that has a vision for technology than most. And so I think I say that with the following, which is, I think the vendors have a responsibility also. Yeah. They need to be able to not necessarily rely, because you're not supposed to be all up on tech. But in your case, you are. And so as a vendor, we need to do a better job in making tech more accessible. And so part of that, like for us, for example, when we're onboarding a client, what we do is we don't just train to features. Oh, this is our messaging platform, and like this is how you send a message, and how you do an attachment. What we do is we actually start with trying to understand, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And so having a discussion and getting alignment on what does success look like? Why did you, why are you looking to adopt messaging? And the answers vary greatly depending on who we're talking to. So for example, we just onboarded a property in Vietnam, in Saigon, and their number one reason is because they, this was a new fact for me, is that outside of Korea, Saigon is the number one or number two most visited place for Koreans. And that for them, they needed the ability to communicate with their guests in Korean because a majority of their guests are Korean. And so if we just didn't have that conversation, we would just be showing them, like, just training them on all this stuff and not really looking at, okay, how can we deploy this in a way that achieves your objective of trying to communicate with your guests in Korean? And talking to another property, they have different goals. And so I think, circling back, as a technology provider, it's really important, I think, that we really understand what are the objectives, and then can we achieve those objectives with the technology. And obviously working with somebody like yourself makes it so much easier and really exciting, but that not everybody is like you. And so I think that onus really falls on the vendors to do a better job in communicating towards goals, as you just said.
No, you're spot on. And I always encourage them to engage someone with prior hospitality operations experience and employ them, put them on your team. This is someone that understands the ins and outs and the day-to-days of operating a hotel and can really be invaluable to your organization. I think one of the biggest things to understand is the UX, right? Don't just think of the end user UX, but also think of the team member, their UX, right? Like, how are they accessing the platform? How seamless is it for them? Is it visually appealing? Because that person's under the same social, I guess, programming, you'd say, based on the new technology and social media, et cetera, that exists. And they have those same expectations as your guests would from a UX perspective. So those are some things I would definitely say to focus on. Yeah, but you're spot on. I agree.
Yeah, Vaughn, that was I was getting, well, that was just such a good prompt for the area of interest, or particular area of interest for me. I talked a little bit before about this idea of sort of human versus machine, and that it's how you bring the two together. But actually, the value of humans isn't diminished at all. I think people are worried about technology replacing human roles. It's not. It's just actually that you need to get humans doing the things that humans do best. And so one of the things, when I looked at, some of the training programs, what you find is it's a long training time to bring staff on board. In some of those call center environments that I looked at, it was, could be 4 or 6 weeks to bring someone on board. But most of that training is around tools. It's around how the tools to use, rather than actually the human skills that you want the human to do. So in other words, you don't want the machine to be closing the sale, or you don't want the machine to be empathetic with the customer or sensitive. That's a human trait, and you want the human to focus on that. But what you want the machine to be doing is take away the mundane things, do it intuitively and easily and quickly and seamlessly. And so, back to the original question, Brent, for me, it's definitely both. It's a combination. It's that magic combination of technology and the person. And when you bring those together, then that's where you're going to get the secret sauce.
Right. And, for me, my biggest thing, because I started in the industry actually from the ground up. I was a bellman manager in training when I first started. And I'm so thankful that my mentor encouraged me to take that opportunity, as opposed to being dialed in and only being a front desk agent to start, because I understand every job classification within hospitality. And the big driver for me is, how can I make their lives easier? Because I remember all the challenges in operating and some of the things that just didn't make sense, right? Like, why were we still using paper luggage tags for the longest while? And how much did that cost? And was that effective? So if we ever had someone with 10 pieces of luggage, I had to use 2 tags and then get all the stickers from the back, right? And then what about the luggage log? Why are we still using pieces of paper that we have to print? Of course, we all are preaching sustainability, but I think it's important to evaluate those ideas and kind of make a shift and a change. And the primary focus shouldn't be about saving money. It should be more so about how do you make your team members' lives easier, right? How do you improve their quality of life at work and outside of work? Because there's a direct correlation between the two. And that, of course, is going to lead to increased revenue and profitability. Always nurture the root of the plant and watch it flourish.
Right. Well, that's a great note to end on. So I want to thank each of you for joining me for a really wonderful conversation. You know, I'm a firm believer that good conversation helps you see many pathways to really exciting destinations. So thank you, each of you and all of you. And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed this discussion and certainly, reach out to our guests because I'm sure they've got even more ideas that they can show you at their properties or in their respective businesses. Thank you so much. Have a good day.